Hi, I'm BJ Williams, and thanks for joining us on this very special Read About It program. The Oklahoma State Arts Council gave us a grant so that we could go visiting writers in their native towns. I'm up here in Tulsa at TCI, and we are going to be talking about Oklahoma writers. I have 4 of them here. We have William Bernhardt, Teresa Miller, Charles Sasser, and Manley Johnson. And Teresa, I'm going to let you start the ball rolling with, are there a lot of writers here in Oklahoma?
Oh yes, and I'm discovering we have more than we realize. I think sometimes we have a tendency to disregard things when we think they're too accessible to us, and I think that carries over to writers. And a few years ago I decided to establish a writing program, and so I sent out flyers saying, please let me know about Oklahoma writers, and I was just stunned by the response. And we have hundreds of Oklahoma writers and a wide range of Oklahoma writers.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually right here we have a poet, a mystery writer, and Chuck, you write everything, don't you?
Stand on the street corner. He'll never pay me.
Right.
He has multiple personalities.
Right. Well, do you think it's just because Oklahoma has something in the water that everybody writes? Is it just...
My personal feeling is that it's short, hard winters and long, hot summers.
Makes you right.
Makes you right. Keeps you inside.
Well, I think what we're seeing throughout now, even publishing is moving from the east and west coast, and I think writers are too. It's a better quality of life, I think, more in the hinterland than it is than it is in the larger cities. So I think it's what you see is a lot of this in the smaller cities. Where the real people are, I think, is what we're beginning to see.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit that if you're going to write about real people, you need to be around them instead of in New York City.
Yeah.
I'll probably get in trouble for that, but...
Well, I think that's true. I'm from a small town, Tahlequah, and Tahlequah's figuring in a lot of literary works now. Even Ellen Gilchrist is writing about Tahlequah. And in Tahlequah, people are each other's entertainment. We're not going to a lot of big productions. We're focusing on each other. I also think the cultural diversity in Oklahoma, the fact that we have so many different cultures, the Native American culture, we have metropolitan areas like Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and we also have the rural areas like Tahlequah, and I think that contributes to it.
I think there's a real interest, not only amongst readers, but also in the publishing houses now, in stories that are set someplace other than the coast, not in New York or San Francisco, but more in the heartland. And of course, nobody can write those stories better than the people who live here.
Right. At least we know where the streets are in town.
Right.
Oh, yeah, demand may produce.
And you know, we can think of ourselves as sort of missionaries to the world at large and sharing Oklahoma. For example, an Oklahoma author, Joyce Carol Thomas, has written a musical based on her novel Marked by Fire that will be opening on Broadway, and it's about life in Ponca City. So it's going to be wonderful to see all these New Yorkers flocking in to see people in Ponca City.
Well, and we do have a large expatriate group of writers
Right.
too. People like John Hope Franklin,
Right.
Carol Harrelson, Diane Glancy. Just a large number of people who have started here and then went on to develop their careers elsewhere. And unfortunately for them, got stuck there.
That's true with Joyce Thomas. She lives in Berkeley now and is a professor out there, but she loves to come to Oklahoma to visit. And it's amazing to me how the Oklahoma settings keep showing up in her work. Even though she does write about other places, Oklahoma keeps coming back to her.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I don't think this is a recent phenomenon, though. However, for example, we can go back to where the red fern grows, you know, to Eric Allen's westerns down around Mullsrow. I think it goes all the way, Boorstein, Daniel Boorstein, the historian, of course. I think it goes way back. It just doesn't, I don't think it's something just suddenly. I think it's a growth here, and that it produces. I think creativity grows best where it can be nurtured. And I don't know if you'd be nurtured in New York City much anymore.
Well, I think Bill's point too is well taken. Of course, publishing and marketing has a lot to do with the growth of different movements. And I think what Bill said about publishers being more open now to regions outside of New York City, I think has made an enormous difference. I'm seeing a lot more of so-called regional novels. Didn't you used to hate that tag, regional novels? To me, a regional novel was a book about New England. It wasn't a book about Oklahoma.
Exotic location.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
New England is pretty exotic when you live on the plains.
Oh, well, it is.
You know, and in publishing houses, we have a great many in Oklahoma, considering the
Right.
population.
Right.
Point Writers Press, Council Oak Books, the University of Oklahoma Press, any number of others that I don't have readily available. And that helps the local writing population.
Absolutely.
They have some place to go. They can talk to a real editor rather than have to write a letter or fax or call on the telephone.
And I think a number of our schools, universities and colleges have creative writing schools of one kind or another, and very competent teachers in those as well. So you don't have to go out of state to learn the basics of your craft. You can stay right here and then keep sending your first novel off till you get published.
Not to forget our good journals, too. There's World
Nimrod.
Literature Today at Norman. There's the Cimarron Review in Stillwater. There's Nimrod in Tulsa, and any number of others. And these have national and international reputations.
And they're a very important place, I think, for writers to get started, to be able to get something published, and that's always, I think, the thing that you need to keep you on going with that. And then there's the Oklahoma Center for Poets and Writers, and there are an awful lot of groups of writers. We have the Oklahoma Writers Federation. There's an Oklahoma chapter of children's writers and illustrators. So there are, I think, a lot of organizations for people who need that little bit of association with others.
We probably should mention the Center for the Book in Oklahoma City as well, because they've done so much for that. We were very much surprised and gratified this past year when we had a writers conference featuring Oklahoma writers that we had nearly 500 people come. So we have to also acknowledge that there's a community who's in this area that's interested in writers and reading. And we did have a few New York agents here and an editor, and they all commented about how they were touched by the interest in books in this part of the country. That in other parts of the country there seemed to be a cynicism now about reading and about books, and that they could hardly believe that so many people were sincerely interested in writers and in reading.
Well, what was it, 2 years ago, I guess it was, when Tulsa had an entire month celebrating its authors. You know, had different events attended by the mayor and by, I think the governor was here once, and these kind of things, just for a whole month, nothing but authors. And that was kind of unique in any city.
Well, with the program that you're on now, Read About It, when I was first broaching the subject, somebody said, well, are there any writers in Oklahoma? And I said, well, just scratching the surface, I think I could probably do 2 or 3 years of programming and never have the same author on twice, because we have so many. And we've got science fiction, romance, Western, drama, suspense, adventure, you name it. If it's in print, we have probably 2 or 3 people here in Oklahoma that are doing it, including the playwrights and that sort of thing. So it seems to be kind of a unique thing for Oklahoma. You think of this in New York and LA, but there's a tremendous number of creative talents.
I get the same response that you did all the time when I travel, particularly outside the state, and that's why I think organizations like the Center for the Book in Oklahoma City or the Oklahoma Center for Poets and Writers, which Teresa, of course, has masterminded, are so special, so wonderful, because they're getting the word out. I mean, we know that there is an enormous amount of talent here, but we need to let everybody else know too, and that's what is really wonderful about these groups.
Well, the Grapes of Wrath image persists in some areas. And for example, this is a true story. My editor at one point, I had written a novel and had sent to her, and she said that the editor sounded the narrator sounded too sophisticated to be from Oklahoma. And I was taken aback because, I mean, she was talking about people like my grandmother when she said that, and I took it very personally.
You know, about 10 or 15 years ago when I first started writing, and especially from one of my editors, and he knew I was part Indian, and he asked me if I lived on a reservation out here, this kind of thing. I said, well, no, we don't have reservations in Oklahoma, but
that persists, though, and what Teresa said about all the different cultures in Oklahoma is very true, and really that's why, as you know, in my books, I've pretty much focused on the metropolitan culture, if you will, but it's for a reason. It's because I think outside the state, too often when people hear about Oklahoma, they think cowboys and Indians, westerns, so I've tried to show something else.
Yeah. I think there are some people who still think that we get around on horseback.
Oh,
here in
sure.
Oklahoma. I have actually been asked that, but won't go into detail as to
We
where.
don't?
We don't. Oh.
Maybe Chuck does.
I suppose it's all a matter of perspective. We ran across something interesting last week in a class I was teaching, a little seminar on S.E. Hinton, and the students found 2 reviews, one by a New Yorker who said that the novel The Outsiders, which takes place in Tulsa, takes place in a small Oklahoma town, and one by a small town writer who said that it took place in a large Oklahoma town. So, who knows?
I think that figure about the decline in the number of readers nationally and in Oklahoma is false. And statistics tend to support it. There are more books being published now than ever before. And just the other day I was thinking, within walking distance of my house, there are 8 bookstores, both used and new, and 1 publishing house. And I think that's pretty good. And walking distance for me, I would consider to be 2 miles, if I can take a taxi back.
Yeah, right. Especially in the summertime, right?
Right.
I don't think you would find that density in a lot of towns here in this country. They're just
Especially in the large cities like New York. The last time I was there, I noticed that several of my favorite bookstores were just boarded up, going out of business. They can't make it. Too much competition.
yeah. Well, out here we don't have that much to do other than TV, so we all read. Maybe that's what it is. No Broadway shows to see.
I was glad Manley mentioned the bookstores because that's another important factor, I think, in the success of Oklahoma Writers is we have some wonderful independent bookstores that have really supported the careers of beginning writers in Oklahoma, and these writers have gone on and really have established reputations now.
Yeah, if you can't, the first hurdle really is getting something published. The second one is getting somebody to buy the book.
Right.
And if they've never heard of you, you're not going to get much space on that shelf unless it's your local bookstore and, oh yeah, you're an Oklahoma writer. And a lot of them do. We'll have a big shelf and it says hometown writers or Oklahoma writers. And
Sure. Go to a store like Steve Sundry's, of course, down on Harvard, or Novel Idea further south. Very supportive of Oklahoma writers, and that can make a real difference when you're just starting.
Talking about support of Oklahoma writers too, Bill, we ought not to forget television medium and radio.
Right.
The interview programs on NPR stations, for instance, your programs, your programs, Teresa, interviewing writers, reminds people that there are writers, gets them acquainted with writers. They begin to look them up and read them. I think we too often think of television and radio as being opponents to the word. They're not really. They're supplements.
Well,
partners.
television has the ability to reach people in a sort of wide broadcast, everywhere sort of way that is unique. I've told Teresa before, I've traveled places far west in the state or far east moving towards Arkansas, and I'll go to small towns to speak to groups that I know haven't the slightest clue who I am, but they know Teresa Miller, by gosh, because they've seen her program on Channel 12 or whatever. She's a superstar.
Well, you know, I think as Wheel of Fortune declined, we were just in the right time slot.
And now that they've seen Bonnie and Clyde, they'll know about Tahlequah.
Yes, and I'm so sorry I missed that, but yes.
It'll be around again.
Good, I hope so.
Good things repeat themselves. Well, I think that it's very important to have this support that we get from our local booksellers and so on, because this country sees over 50,000 books a year published. And although there may be several hundred Oklahoma writers, that's just a drop in the bucket. And to try to stand out in that avalanche is almost impossible.
I think that's why it's so important for us as readers also to be particularly supportive of Oklahoma writers. It's getting back to something I mentioned a moment ago, that because these Oklahoma writers are so accessible to us, that we can see them in Walmart or in the drugstore, we sometimes think that they can't be maybe as important as some of these other writers that we hear about. Great story about Joyce Heifler was visiting with a friend, and she was so happy that her book had been selected as a Book of the Month Club selection. And her friend said, "You mean the Oklahoma Book of the Month Club?" And Joyce said, "No, it's the Book of the Month Club."
When I introduce somebody as an award-winning writer, I'm sure they think, oh, well, he's won the Oklahoma Book Award, which I think is pretty prestigious. But we have some who've won international awards. And I'm sure that there are several people sitting here who are going to win them before they're through. But we don't think of that. We don't think that the person living just down the block is someone whose books are translated into Japanese, into Finnish, Greek, whatever.
Well, Bill's past president of Novelist Inc., which is one of the largest writing organizations in the country.
That's true.
Well, they figured you weren't doing anything here in Oklahoma, so you could.
I think that was it. Had some time to spare. That's
Yeah.
right. Now, that was a wonderful opportunity. It was last year that I was president, but Novelist Inc. is basically a coalition. Every member is a professional writer, has published at least 2 books, one of them in the last 5 years. So these are the real, hardcore people who really do the work and take it seriously. And trying to get together and make the world a little bit kinder place for authors. And I thought it was a real privilege to be the president. It's a wonderful organization.
Well, what I think we see too a lot of times, like my son's a writer and he's in Miami, Florida, and he belongs to a writing club down there, and in which he is the only one who's published anything. But here, like Tulsa Night Writers and this kind of, Gene Hager and Bill and a lot of people who are involved who are actually professionals who make a living at it, and they're kind of bringing on the other writers who haven't quite reached that point. I think it's. I didn't realize when I was a kid how important that could be, is to associate with other writers, to know that it's possible, that we're all we're just all ordinary people, and that we can do it.
I have to admit, one of the most fun things about being a writer and people knowing that you're a writer and that's how you're making your living and all is kids, teenagers will come over, people in the neighborhood or friends who are interested in writing and they really want to. And I think normally 9 times out of 10 their parents would be saying, "That's ridiculous, you can't make your living." But they say, oh, but Bill does. and so that doesn't work anymore, and I think that's wonderful.
Well, that's one of the things I have heard from a lot of writers is if they hadn't had that support, whether, as you say, the Tulsa Night Writers, there are several groups in Oklahoma City, if they weren't able to talk to people who were published and who, as you said, are supporting themselves with writing, a lot of them would have given up and we would have lost some great talent. But that's important, and I think that's part of why we've got so many writers here in Oklahoma. They just kind of, it's like a magnet maybe. It attracts more.
There's a lot of nurturing too involved, because when you first start out, for most of us at least, we have to go through those stages of getting rejections over and over again. I was telling someone yesterday I once got a dime back from the Atlantic Monthly, and I'm still not sure quite what that means. It bothers me. I may have to go into therapy about that. But it was so nice to be able to have writers to talk to and to have them openly saying, these are established writers, well, I went through rejections, that you can keep going, you can learn from the rejections, and you do need that kind of support, I think. At least I did, and I think a lot of us
Oh
have.
gosh, yeah. I think rejection is part of it. It must be part masochist in order to, sort of accept it over and over so many years.
Yeah, I think the typical profile of a writer is somebody who's had about 20 different jobs and has been rejected at least 30 times.
30 is conservative.
Right.
Without being traumatized.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a friend who's a writer, lived in London, and at one time she was papering her sewing room with covers from the New Yorker, because she was an American living there, and this got her a breath of home. But then she started writing, and she gave up papering her room with New Yorker covers and started papering them with rejection slips.
Oh my gosh, how would you hate? I'd hate to go into a room every day and nothing
Yeah,
but rejections
really.
on every wall.
Made her mad. It energized her.
Yeah, you need that little extra push maybe to get moving there. So, but that again, when you can talk with somebody, I think an author said recently, you know, it's really nice to talk with somebody who's been holed up at home in their room, like I have been. At least I get out once a month, and they know what it's like, and they know how to deal with exasperated family and everything. Who's saying, you know, are you still working on that thing? And that really helps to know that somebody else is going through that as well.
I think so too. And just ongoing problems that you have as a writer, maybe little technical problems like with the transition, or maybe you're experiencing some writer's block and you just need someone to, and it almost takes another writer to understand that.
Well, and then there's simply the training that you can pick up with some of these groups about how to make your presentation in 3 minutes when you're at a conference in Dallas, and that's all the time you've got to interest an editor, how to write a cover letter. There are a lot of things that I suspect you don't really learn in the creative writing courses, and you can pick them up. Bill can tell you, you know, how to get across to a publisher, and Chuck can say, well, this is how you make a quick impression, and so on and so forth. And Manley can maybe suggest how to get published in Nimrod. So I think you have an in there, don't you, Manley?
First you have to write something.
First you have to write something. And it has to be good, too,
It has to
doesn't
be
it?
good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important too. Oklahomans actually have fairly high standards, I think.
We're talking about writing courses. I'm not sure you can teach writing. It's something you have to learn. It's like riding a bicycle. You have to do it. But I do think that it has this advantage, that it gets a lot of very young people when they're malleable and in the habit-forming stage, and they begin to write, and they get hooked. And then they have someone to read their stuff because someone's paid to read it and has to, and can tell them about these technical things that would take them years to find out on their own.
I also think another advantage of a writing class, one of the biggest problems I think a lot of younger writers face, is disciplining yourself to write every day. And I think a class can provide a sense of discipline and structure that's important early on.
Well, I agree with Manley. I don't think you can teach writing as such. I think you can teach the craft. I think you can teach some of the skills, you know, the foreshadowing and outlining and plotting. These things I think you can. The writing itself I think comes from, the voice I think comes from just doing it. But speaking of the kids, look at the Broken Arrow Young Authors Conference they have every year. Kids, grade school kids even come out there, you know, the kids who want to be writers when they're, and then I know Bill's spoken, I think Teresa's spoken out there, I have, I don't know if you have yet or not.
Fran has.
Yeah. So, but these are kids that want to be writers that start out. And I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and they've got a place here in Oklahoma to go. I think that's important. We want a lot of those internationally famous writers to be native Oklahomans instead of just moving here because they heard about a good group. Which I have heard a couple of authors say that when they first got started, they moved to Oklahoma because they knew there were a lot of writers here that they could associate with, really, and pick up a few tricks of the trade and a little bit of encouragement. So,
You know, I think it's kind of interesting. You know, like Bill's doing very well with mysteries. Now, you know, if John Grisham were to come in and sit down and we say, hey, well, that's interesting, we'll talk to you. But Bill comes in, we've known each other so long that that's just Bill.
yeah,
That's right. You know,
Right.
you know, so we get to know each other, and we really don't think about it until maybe a thing like this or some of Teresa's programs come up, and we begin to say, well, you know, these people are doing pretty good stuff here.
Isn't that really one of the most wonderful things about it, though? I think getting to meet people and know people. Teresa and I have talked about, I don't understand why people always say, you know, writing is a lonely profession, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's. I mean, sure, when you're actually writing, it's you and the typewriter or computer or whatever. But I think this has been a wonderful experience. I've had the opportunity to meet people, you guys for one,
Exactly.
and hundreds of others get to travel and meet people. I haven't found it to be lonely at all.
I think it's lonely only from the outside looking in.
I guess so.
They say, here's someone isolated in a room with a computer, a typewriter, or a pen, and they think necessarily, therefore they must be lonely. When in point of fact, you're talking to all these characters and living with them and understanding them and reading your stuff and using that as a kind of basis for a dialogue.
But isn't that first blank page, I'm not a writer, so I can ask dumb questions like this, isn't that first blank page or that blank computer screen, isn't that a little bit nervous-making?
No.
No?
It's the middle.
It's the middle. Oh, okay.
I remember Winston Churchill saying, someone asked him, he said, isn't it difficult when you're faced with that blank canvas to know what to do? And he said, oh no, I take my biggest brush and I put a lot of paint on it and I make a slash across the canvas. And from there on, it's easy.
I think it's really different for every writer. I think for some it's the beginning that's hard, for some it's the middle, for some the ending's difficult, and some people get down to the end and they want to have to go 4 or 5 different ways at the very last. And so I think we all have sort of designer problems as writers.
Okay. Well, let's close on that note. We've just about run out of time, and I want to make sure to get all 4 of you introduced again. And thank you very much for being on Read About It. And we have had with us William Bernhardt and Teresa Miller, Charles Sasser, and Manley Johnson here in Tulsa, talking about celebrating our heritage, Oklahoma writers. Be sure and join us next week when we'll have even more Oklahoma writers.